My name is Kerem Asfaroğlu. I'm the founder of Dark Source, a light and design practice driven by social and environmental values. I'm also a graphic artist, a light artist, but I'm mostly known for dark sky friendly and environmentally friendly design applications in rural and and urban public realm. Um, what I would like to talk about is, before actually going to projects, I would like to pave the road towards some of my philosophy and appreciation of the nighttime, because night as a concept I find fascinating because it introduces contrast, therefore duality and multiplicity of realities, where it's day and night, whether it's the rural versus urban. It has so much to it, and it just basically introduces a different concept and realm in itself. So if we just basically wanted to deduce it down to this is the nighttime on Earth. It's basically the shadow of the Earth falling in on itself, which creates the nighttime as we know it. But it's been incredibly consistent for eons that allowed our, evolution, visual system to adapt to, our life-sustaining behaviors to adapt to the cycle dance of day and night, which is a mind-blowing reality on its own. And imagine, if an alien species a civilization came down to look at this blue marble, the first plain sight observation they would have is this planet hosts intelligent life, because there is an artificial resistance to the darkness when it's within its night darker hemisphere, which I find very exciting in itself. And if you get closer into the scale, and like this is where I live in London, the nocturnal city is very, I find, similar to a cerebral cortex in many ways, that you can see the flashing wanes, and the light becomes a symbol of the activity as well. But the night is a lot about experience. It's about having that one-to-one scale in the horizontal plane of the city. The passerby's perfume, or just basically people being out and about, having a pint, or the stories behind the lit windows of the night. And I like that duality between the external and internal, and what happens behind those. Because as the night falls, the mind descends, our hormone levels change, our perception, the visual system completely changes into a different system. Therefore, our perception of reality completely changes. And I like that tapestry of human activity happening simultaneously in various places, gives so much room for imagination. Night never describes just a duration or time of the day to me. It is also a venue. It's a stage where voluntarily, involuntarily, we come together on this platform, on this realm, and we create it together. But it's needless to say, until now, currently the nightscape that we have in our cities are far more tolerant and inclusive or accessible than it's ever been. And it's important to say that, for the large chunk of our history on this planet, we had no control over the light, and control over the fire and light actually played an important role in colonizing the night for us. And surely we must have witnessed, wildfires or storms resulting with fire, but we had no control over fire until, we literally discovered it. And it never came as just as a concept of illumination or visibility. It was a complex jumble of other functions that was offense, defense. It was nutrition. It was social gatherings, us gathering around the fire, sharing our stories. It was exploration, seeing what's beyond that hill and going after the other hill. It literally changed our purpose and place on this planet. It extended the hours of the social day or the social time that we have here. I'm also fascinated with the evolution of the illumination and fire or lighting technology, What I find very interesting in this is like for the large chunk of our history of illumination, light was actually mobile. It was something that we brought together with us, whether it was starting from the torch, going to the candle and then paraffin lamp. Only within the last couple of centuries, we are actually experiencing the light as in a fixed place and as a municipality or amenity. For example, in Britain, or let's say up until the 17th century in early modern Europe, the regulation of the street lighting was pretty much related to the policing the night and night watching. It's basically people were not allowed to go out and about after the curfew. If you had to go out, you had to carry a lantern, not to see, to be seen, because if you did not reveal yourself at night, it meant that you had shadowy intentions of attacking somebody. But by 17th century, the activity in Central Europe was, the night sphere was teeming with activity. It was impossible to enforce curfews. People would love to go to the, coffee shops, theater plays, going to the shop fronts. By that time, the newly explored night economy played an important role in basically facilitating this infrastructure and providing lighting as an amenity and allowing people to be out and about. And until the Industrial Revolution, we've had a very agricultural existence, and defined by the harvest of the seasons, and managed and governed by the political and social elite. We would also, the way we experienced night was very different. It was really not efficient to be out there after dark because it was really dark. Then we would retire to bed at an early time. We had a concept called second sleep, where you would, sleep for 4 hours and then wake up in the middle of the night, use that time for prayer, self-reflection, sex, and then retire to bed for another 3-4 hours. But lighting, as much as it transformed our life, when, after the Industrial Revolution, one of the interesting things that, or before the Industrial, in the 17th, 18th century, we've also started noticing that as the advent of lighting was being more and more common, the night turned into day more consistently in the workshops and ateliers. So there was a duality of working class and the middle class as well, that kind of projected itself through the way that the night was utilized. For example, spinning bee sessions were not only popular in Europe, it was very, very prominent in the US as well. But all these things also relate to the fact that the light also being perceived as the symbol of authority. So that led to, in France and also like Austria, there were, people, during a protest, they would, knock the lanterns out with a rock or stone, whatever they can throw. And that meant that they were unseating the authority that the municipal lighting was standing for. Needless to say, our control over the light also came to a level that is excessive, and that's where my profession is quite interested. What I'm focused on professionally is that of all the species ever existed, of us humans, basically, and our use of artificial lighting came to such a level that it is threatening the biodiversity in many species, and including our own well-being as well. All the surfaces that we look at, emit light. The light is no longer a medium that reveals things as an effect. It's also a medium that is consumed in a 2D way. We look at graphic, light is just basically reduced into a kind of a graphic medium that is conveying information to us. And there's a growing concern, in various ways, that all the surfaces that we look at are trying to communicate with us in some shape or form, which is not letting light only becoming light as a tool. It's also transforming into a different age as well. And that is one of those things that keeps me awake at night. what purpose the light at night will serve in the future. Do we have a grand vision of what this is going to be, what master it's going to serve? Because it could easily, we're paving the road towards a dystopian future that, like, you know, and eradicating night at such a rapid pace. It's difficult to see how we're going to re-establish that connection. And enough stories. I'm just going to get into some project examples about some cute little compilation of projects. I didn't know Elizabeth will be presenting as well. We had the opportunity to work together on this, and she's done some, you know, work, get involved with this project at a great value as well. So Penumbrella is a light art installation that was aimed to explore the amount of wasted light within its nocturnal city. It's at such an alarming level that actually can power solar panels at night. Long story short, I'm just going to play a video for you guys. This hasn't been released yet. This was a rough edit. You lucky people were able to see. We'll finish it and put it up online soon enough. Here's another project now we've done some years back. This was organized by the BritBox called, the event was named Light Night Canning Town. The idea behind this was they wanted to commission a series of light installations and events within the during a single night, where people, you know, all the residents and community can come out and enjoy their surroundings under a different light. We've been given this particular space, which we really enjoyed because they had really high quality acoustic properties, and we were lucky to be given this like thick urban darkness as well. So we were thinking of how we can actually bind all these qualities together and bring people together. We decided to create a ring of tom-tom drums that we filled up with some diffused water, and then when we uplit them, it created pulsating patterns on the side of the A13 flyover, so basically on the ceiling. That meant as people were playing the drums, the pulsating patterns played a graphic equalizer role that basically not only illuminated the people's faces, but also created ever-changing patterns on the ceiling as well. And what I like about this project is it brought lots of different people from different cultural backgrounds, age groups, and people also formed their own personas through the drumming. We never explained them what they need to do. They only found the drumsticks, and as people went in and out, drumming never stopped, and it kept always changing rhythm and pattern. And it was very interesting to see how different groups had different personas. Here's the video for this as well. Another project that we recently completed at Place Brennan. This is a dark sky friendly project. This is more what I usually do on a day-to-day basis. We've been lucky enough to work with Snowdonia National Park Authority. This is what the site was doing in the past, to just basically open up a portal to hell that you can see the light glowing everywhere, which is, you know, you could see the site from, you know, kilometers, hundreds of kilometers away. Long story short, we've been lucky enough that BBC actually featured this project, and they've done a better job than I can conveying this. So here's the clip.
As dusk falls, I can see the impact of Danny's work at Snowdonia's National Outdoor Centre.
So we're here in Place Brennan. This place was a terrible light polluter. It can be seen from miles and miles around. So we mitigated the light as much as possible and made all the lights dark sky friendly. And we've reduced their carbon footprint by doing that by around 2 tons of carbon a year, which is huge. Our lighting designers came up with these handrails, which I love these handrails. It's so simple. The light's just installed under here. Got the warm temperature lighting.
That's the key then, is it?
That is the key, yeah. So that's what's really good for the wildlife. Light shining downwards. You can see where you're going, and there's absolutely nothing going up into the night sky.
But she also brings this magic to those who live in areas where light pollution means the stars aren't quite so visible.
Well, sadly, Snowdonia's stars are being masked by the clouds, but all is not lost.
So you can see what it was before in this shot from distance. You can see the amount of glowing light that's going in the night sky. And you can see this is the current situation. We're still doing the photography for this, but you can see that most of the light is coming from the interior, where they got these massive bay windows. But apart from that, we've eliminated the light pollution dramatically, which is something that I found fun. Removing light as much as adding light is, like, you know, my passion. One last project. I know that we've reached 15 minutes, so I'll wrap it up very quickly. This is a project that is very dear to my heart. It's kind of gives you a perspective about the night experience in a different continent. We've worked with 2 charities that I've been very close with in the past, and we decided to deliver a project in Gambia to train 30 local electricians about solar power and lighting design to improve their job opportunities. The problem with, particularly in Gambian context, was the power is very expensive commodity, and it's not reliable, it's not always there. And we wanted to implement this project in a place that is actually meant some value. So we found this lovely gentleman called Aliji, who had this 24/7 accessible studying space. We've installed the lighting there, and one of the pure quality, the greatest experiences I ever had as a designer was on the last day when we installed the project. And I need to also mention that one of the greatest risks is about, like, you know, when you use fire and kerosene lamps in this parts of the world, that actually is very, very dangerous. So we're trying to eliminate that as well. So on the last day when we done the photography and we stepped outside when the project was completed, we realized the power had gone out in town again, but the kids in the studying space had no idea. So this is how design actually improves the quality of life. That was my first client-side experience as a veteran designer. I had never had that first-hand experience. Here's a very quick clip, and then we'll wrap it up.
My name is Alaji Ndao. I'm the founder of the Inspiring Youngsters Community Library. The concept of the organization is literacy and community development, because there is no space where students and young people can develop their academics. And the library provides 24-hour services to students of all ages from different parts of the communities up to 5-6 kilometers away from where the library is. Vessel UK and Daughters of Africa Foundation brought in the installation of the light and design / solar power, and it has given the library a new dimension, which enabled us to have 24-hour uninterrupted electricity. And this is definitely one of those moments that we have been yearning for. No more power lost. The coming of the Light and Design project is really going to save us, and the youth will be able to study now 24 hours without light interrupted. It also gives us safety, because in most cases, when the electric goes off, we have the students using candles, and these candles are dangerous. The coming of the solar will bring hope. It will make a great impact for the life of many young people.
Until recently, our ancestors experienced this night sky brimming with stars, and we had a different, genuine connection to the universe and to the night. And one of the mission that I have on, I'd like to see myself as like whatever I can do to improve on that relationship, and we can reclaim the night. We use negative connotation and language. Things took a dark turn. We're at the dark ages and blah, blah, blah. We've actually really got disenfranchised and disassociated from the darkness. So what I'd like to see one day that we can actually find ourselves reconnected, find our night to connect with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karim. That was really fantastic. And I'm sort of glad my supervisors are not watching, because if they saw your drawings, I would be in big trouble. Elizabeth, are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go. I have tons of questions, but I'm going to hold them to the end.
Okay. Share my screen. Is it working? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so well, thanks for allowing me to be here. So I'm a PhD researcher in Lancaster University in urban design. My supervisor is Nick Dunn, which probably most of you know. So my work is about developing ways to better take into account our nocturnal environments in urban design practices. And I'm going to show you where my research is at so far. So a bit about my background. So I'm originally an architect. After a very short period of practice, I went to study visual didactics in fine arts. And that's where I started using photography as a way of investigating the relation between people and places. And this brought me to work as a photojournalist or documentarian, and I've got to work in many parts of the world. And through this, I developed a very strong interest in what happens at night, and just using photography to capture atmospheres, and especially dark atmospheres. Yeah, so for me, this PhD is like a way to combine my passions and bring my photographic practice back into urban design methods, because I think it's a very useful tool to especially when we're talking about the interplay of light and dark in space and how it transforms space. Like, so I'm seeing how photography can be used as a tool for that. So my work is mainly directed to urban designers and architects, and I would like to demonstrate how light conditions our perceptions and totally shapes the way we use place, and also how nocturnal field work and other visual practices could allow us to better understand places after dark, and help us to develop tools for urban night design. As we all know here, nocturnal territories have been largely excluded from human knowledge, and particularly in urban design, like as from my own practice, I know we've never learned to see things at night. And as we don't rely much on our eyes, we use our senses, other senses, our imagination and our memory to make sense of our surroundings. So it's a time where the inner worlds of ourselves and the outer worlds meet. And since our nocturnal imaginaries struggle with, imagination and reality is so imbricated into each other at nighttime that we struggle with classic urban investigation methods. So images of the urban night are usually very stereotypical. So you have night as either a place to be feared or as some electric fantasy world. The conventional representations we have of it is usually satellite images, as Karen was showing. And basically the way we represent the night in urban design disciplines are not fit to account for nocturnal realities and the experience of places at night. And this is the problem that I would like to address in my work. Even in the light design disciplines, there's like an impulse to measure and quantify light, and that doesn't say much about nocturnal experience either. So, the question I'm asking is, how can a better understanding of places after dark inform urban design? And the lack of nuanced understanding and the lack of tools to investigate the night is what I'm going to try to, it's the underlying idea for what I'm trying to do is create an atlas of darkness. And so it's basically going out and collecting night knowledge and trying to bring it together in a sort of design guide for urban designers. So I'm looking for night knowledge in different areas. First of all, in art, in culture, then through my own photographic fieldwork, and then in actual light experts, which are light design and theater practices. With this, I'm bringing it together to bringing all the material together through and making different case studies of what I've learned so far. And then the idea is to try to test that on a real site and see if this is going to help to develop strategies for night design. So I'm just going to go over the things I've collected so far. So it's work in progress, and it's not, so there's a lot of images, so I'll just go through them. So in art, so I spent the first month of my thesis in lockdown, not being able to go out, so instead just collecting images in various art forms, because in art we can find many powerful representations of nocturnal atmospheres, and so I've been collecting what relates to the night. And with this, I'm trying to build some sort of a mental geography of the night based on collective imagination and shaped by our cultural landscapes. So this is just the initial stages where I'm trying to understand what is it that fascinates us and makes us scared of darkness. So I'm using visual methods to try to extract what that is. And then I'm looking at how these could inform the way we approach urban design and the way we think of places for the night. And part of it is trying to build a visual lexicon of the night through these images. An example of one of the case studies is the Warburg Institute, which is I don't know if you know Abbie Warburg, the art historian. So all his life he has collected images, and in the institute they have like 400,000 images, and I spent a day there just trying to see where in what categories and where he placed the night, and so that's one of the cases. The second source of information is just my own firsthand experience and explorations of dark places throughout my travels. I'm lucky to travel a lot. And through these, I've been collecting different types of darkness. And what I'd like to demonstrate is how darkness is specific to each place and each time. And so I'm trying to collect, maybe identify different typologies of urban darkness. And I'm using my own photos as a resource to build up understanding about light and night spaces. So some of the first categories I'm coming up with is in dark night spaces as theaters. And so I've been collecting what seems to me like as a collection of night stages of accidental scenes. Because sorry. I think by looking at these things and seeing them as stages, it can allow us to notice things that we haven't noticed before, and maybe enhance existing qualities of night spaces. This is an example. The other things I'm collecting is colors of the of transitions of how spaces move in and out of the darkness, and there's a tremendous spectrum of different colors that appear. Animals and humans. The other thing that characterizes the urban night, and Karim spoke of this earlier, is the way that there's a sort of inversion in the city. Is what was hidden before all of a sudden becomes visible, which is the insides of the buildings. So when the city goes dark, the inner worlds become accessible to us. And it opens like new ways of looking at the city through like a sequence of intimate spaces, and it's just it gives us a total different perspective on the city. There's some places that I explored more thoroughly. For example, I spent a few months in a very dark island in Greece, and I'm working on a short film of how the use of light shapes a very particular relationship to a landscape and to a context. But I want some other ones in another type of darkness that I got to explore in Africa in different wildlife areas. Something that's been fascinating me for a long time is artificial darkness, and I've been exploring a lot of that in churches. I got to spend a night in the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, and I've been trying to see how darkness influences and shapes the religious experience, and it contributes to its force. The other place I'm looking in is like the actual experts of light and dark. And so there's light designers, which have absolutely or hardly any connection with urbanists and architects, and as well as stage designers and theater people, where these are disciplines that are really dealing with spatial problems and creating atmospheres. And there's really hardly no bridges between these disciplines. And so I would like to go out and collect some of their expertise and somehow bring it back to urban designers. So this is the project that Karim showed earlier. So I got to meet Karim in London. So he's the first light designer I met, and I was very pleased to do so. And so the project he showed earlier was this one, but then we also went for a walk, and it was very interesting to walk with a light designer because it made me look at things very differently. And for example, in this image, Karen was saying how sometimes something that's not lit up can be even more powerful than something that is lit up. And another thing is that light design is showing something about the context that you wouldn't see in the daytime. It's not just repeating it's not just showing what there is, it's showing a totally different reality. So I found that a very inspiring insight into designing places. I'm starting to make these little booklets to sort of condense my research, and this one is about, I've been collecting images in stage designs that depict the night, the urban night, but like put them on stage, and I'm looking at how these are lit up and how for narrative purposes the designers are playing with shadows and lights. The same thing by going into circuses and just basically I'm just going everywhere where it's dark and seeing how the light tells us stories. So all these fragments of collections of night creatures or specimens of, I don't know exactly how to define them. These are all supposed to head to a design strategy for a real place, and that place is the place that I'm going to try to work on is in Mayfield, Manchester, and it's actually the place that I had chosen like many years back to do my architectural thesis on, and so I'm really happy to come back to it through another strategy, a night design strategy. And so I'm basically testing if everything I'm learning about the night can actually be converted into tools for night design. So based on photography. So I've been going through the site over numerous night walks and seeing what that makes the existing qualities of the night, trying to identify them and then map them and identify places that are particularly important at night, and then this could be a sort of structure from which we could start to build a night design strategy. And there's also a load of other tools I would like to try to make to using images to compose with night atmospheres. Thank you. I'm finished.
Thank you. That was great. And I mean, I have the advantage of knowing what I'm working on, and I'm having to deal with some of the same questions. You know, how do you find these methods when you're going through cities? How do you qualify what you're even looking? How do you define these themes? And so we'll have, you know, lots to talk about at the end of this. But I'm going to move on to Javier and the Night Scenes project. And if any of you haven't had a chance to check out the Night Scenes or the Scène de Nuit website, it's really worthwhile. All right.
Thanks a lot, Claire, Donny, for very nice invitation. I'm very happy to meet you all. So I'm going to share my screen first of all, and I will use like the website you were mentioning before as the main guideline for my presentation. So it will be maybe a non-linear presentation. I'm going to kind of improvise a bit, but to brief you briefly about what this project is about, it's a research project that is developed at Het Geneva, Geneva University of Arts and Design, and I am the head of the Department of Interior Architecture. So basically, Scène de Nuit is a project trying to explore the role of night in the construction of the architectural discourse, and to introduce you with the topic very, very rapidly. Like up until today, like night has been quite often an obliterated paradigm in the construction of architectural discourse. So still today, when you open architecture magazines, the most prominent ones, Croquis, A+U, even Apartamento, quite often there is only a diurnal photography. And as a result of that, quite often also like the accompanying theory and texts are also diurnal by default, or at least they don't interact with the conditions of night in the construction of architecture and interior design as discipline. So a few years ago, like 3 years ago, with some colleagues within the institution, we realized that there was this kind of niche or even obliterated paradigm in the discipline, and we started off the project in an informal way, even without having like the form of a research project. We did an exhibition in Lausanne, winning a curatorial competition for an exhibition in Phare Lausanne. Phare Lausanne is a gallery of architectural exhibitions in the city of Lausanne. And we won a competition with a few colleagues for curating an architectural exhibitions, and we proposed to display night scenes. So that was really the origin of this project, by constructing night itself. So to put you into context, we decided to create an exhibition that would only open during nighttime, and which would open only during 5 nights. And each night was meant to be a different scene, basically. And instead of doing the traditional architectural exhibition in which you have like images, scale models, etc., all the content was inhabitable. All the content was meant to be inhabited. So the scenography of the space was made with one-to-one spaces. It was fabricated by, well, conceived and fabricated by our students in Het Geneva. So for example, this is the scenography for the film theater. So there was one night which was consecrated to the film theater as a night typology, and we presented one film with Mathieu Barret, who's a filmmaker, a very prominent one. Presented his film L'Epoque, and the students from Het Geneva, from our department, built up this scenography at Phare Lausanne, in which the guest was also like, so to say, motivated by the scenography of the space itself. So the space became a kind of prop to stimulate the discussions about the role of night scenography, night scenes in the construction of cinematography, more particularly. So as I said before, we did a series of nights. We also did the nightclub, which is a technology that has been thoroughly revisited over the last few years by Vitra. We had a series of lectures, scholars and PhD candidates running research on the history and contemporaneity of nightclubs. So we had Paul Esteve, Octave Perrault from the Cuisine Pavilion, etc. And And we were convinced that there was a way of producing theory that should be based on the presentations and the debates and discussions that we had on site. So all the images that you see on the right-hand side of the screen were taken during the event, and all the images that are embedded into the text are historical references on the history of nightclubs. For me, it was a real surprise to realize that actually we had a lot of people who are not normally associated to the architectural event already queuing to hear the lectures. So they were not only queuing for the party that we had afterwards. We got an official license from the city of Lausanne to be a legal nightclub on that very night. But people were really queuing for the intellectual content that was meant to be displayed and presented before the event. So the research project is in a way on night itself, but it's also a project that tries to revisit like the format of the architectural research itself. And that's why when you flip through the different categories, you will see that it's a project that takes the form of diverse mediums and media. So there are exhibitions, there are courses, there are lectures, publications, and workshops. It's a research project that has been ongoing for a couple of years now. Since the very beginning, I wanted it to be sort of open source, but even if possible, I mean open access, but even if possible open source, meaning by that even like some other forms of research coming from outside our research group could be incorporated to, which is the case. Like now, if you go into the workshop category, you will see like some workshops that have been actually conducted by people not specifically belonging to the research group, but that have been authorized to collaborate with us. For example, this was a workshop conducted by one of my assistants at Geneva, not directly under my supervision, exploring like gender conditions at night, which was also like developed with EPFL, with the Department of Architecture at EPFL. Meaning by that the research is really a collective endeavor since the very beginning. And that it dynamizes like different categories of researchers, from amateurs to scholars, from students to teachers since the very beginning. To give you a bit of kind of perspective of the diversity of actions and workshops, this is a workshop we did a couple of years ago on the format of the architecture magazine itself, trying to question why night photography is not present in some mainstream journals and even in history books, etc. And we invited the director of El Croquis, Richard Levine. So El Croquis is one of the most prominent architectural magazines in the world. It publishes 5 issues per year, normally monographs dedicated to explore the architecture of star architects worldwide. So you get the big names who have won the Pritzker Prize, like Sana, Rafael Moneo, OMA, Herzog de Meuron, etc. And we invited Richard Levin to come to Geneva and to do a nocturnal edition of El Croquis with the same methods that he normally uses for publishing the magazine itself. So during 2 weeks, he taught our students how to take pictures, how to do photograph, because he's always kind of directing the photography of El Croquis next to the photographer. But the only constraint I put him was that all pictures should be night pictures, nocturnal pictures. So the invitation was itself an invitation, but also a critique, which he loved. I mean, he was really fascinated by the format. And then students laid out it like this nocturnal edition of El Croquis with him that you can also download from the website. And then they learned how to take pictures. They also learned how to relay like photography to the typical layout of the journal, etc. So it was a kind of a mirror of the official format of the journal, trying to question like the modus operandi of the journal. Some other workshops have been more based on performative actions. For example, this one was done in September in Geneva, after sunset, before sunrise. And we dynamized a group of 70 students during 1 week, different scenes and fragments and parts of the city of Geneva that we took as an opportunity to question them at night. So the students occupied or revisited these places with different mechanisms. For example, the image you are seeing now on the screen is the lakeside, and at night they did this kind of informal kind of projection or cinematic kind of a space that could dynamize the nocturnal identity of the border of the lake, and it attracted a lot of visitors. Then some other places which are normally abandoned and at time were also like activated with some performances. So it's a research that sometimes takes a scenographic form, sometimes takes photographic form, sometimes it takes a performative dimension. And in all its kind of dimensions, it contributes to the exploration of night in the construction of architectural discourse. This was a brilliant intervention by the students, in which they went to the bus station in the city center of Geneva, which is normally an empty space at night, and they decided to illuminate it from the outside. They didn't have the key of the pavilion, but they could illuminate it from the outside, and they turned it into a informal film theater at night, where all the projectors were located on the outside. And they also edited this video that I can share with you.
Nous observons la gare routière. C'est un espace temporel. Nous remarquons qu'il est dicté par l'horaire et qu'il y joue un rôle principal. Il agit comme une bulle, un espace où on vit le temps, mais pas le moment. Personne ne vient ici pour passer un moment.
Cette robe noire orange scintillait, comme pour souligner l'étreinte d'un flot peintre des bains, qui à sa guise les étés du soir romantique.
Some other actions or formats are more academic, so to say. So if we go back to seeing, there are also lectures. So a few months ago, like 3 or 4 months ago, we had an international symposium on the nocturnal history of architecture, where we really tried to do a parallel historiography of the discipline, specifically focused on night dimensions. So we really went through the classical periods of architecture, like Greco-Roman, Renaissance, Baroque, etc., trying to write a parallel history of architecture, and with different guests. Half of the presentation were focused on the 20th century, obviously, but we really tried to cover like most of different periods, like also some non-Western geographies. So we also had some presentations from Japanese scholars, etc. And the result of this symposium will be published next year with the Spector Books, with the same name, with the same title, Nocturnal History of Architecture. Some publications are already out. So, for example, this workshop that I have presented you with before, the nocturnal edition of a croquis has already been published as an essay in French and in English. A book on the first exhibition we did at FAR Lausanne has been recently published by Ediciones Asimétricas, with a lot of photographic content, but also with the transcripts and edits of all the conversations that we had during the exhibition. So it's a way of producing theory which is based on the oral and discursive production of theory. And this text that you can see here is the introduction text to the book itself. And some other publications will be coming out soon, as the one I said before about the nocturnal history of architecture, etc. It's an ongoing project that is kind of taking diverse direction with different partners, collaborators, friends, etc., in different geographies and locations. And hopefully we will see it being further developed over the last few years. If you are interested in some of the performances or content or publications, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thanks a lot, Claire. Thanks a lot to the rest of the team. And this is the end of my presentation.
Thanks, that was really great. And I'm still trying to hold off asking lots and lots of questions, but yeah, and I've put the website address up in the chat in case anybody missed that. Or said you knew. Okay, last but not least, Nicolas. Coming back to France now.
Hello. Hello, thank you, Claire. Hello, everyone. I will try to keep the 15 minutes because it's already 7:30 p.m. here. Thank you, Claire, for the opportunity to present the work carried out in Brest Métropole in France at the International Night Studies Network. My name is Nicolas Well. I am an architect. I hold a PhD in urban planning, and I am an associate researcher at the laboratory Ambiance Architecture Urbanité at the Architecture School of Nantes in France. I currently run the company L'Observatoire de la Nuit, a consultancy firm specializing in strategies toward light sobriety. And sorry, I forgot to share my screen here and here. So tonight I will talk about the collaborative approach to the territorialization of nighttime environment.
Hi, I think that there is a technical problem.
Yeah. Do you hear me?
Now we can.
Yeah. And do you see my screen?
I think that it's frozen.
Yeah, I see that too. I'm gonna stop it. Yeah. Okay. Do you see my screen now?
Can you move it?
Yeah, move it and see if it works.
Whoa.
Yeah. Now it's
okay. There is just it's a bit confusing. Just wait. Here. Okay. Whoa. Just wait a moment. I think my graphic card just crashed.
Of course, it waited till now.
Yeah, and it never happened before, so I don't know what's going on.
Do you want us to chat for a few minutes, or do you want to talk without the screen? What do you want to do?
We're
a relaxed group.
Yeah, I see this. I don't know what's going on. Just I'm gonna quit and come back like in 2 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll fill the space, and I'm going to ask a question that's sort of a general question. From the 3 presentations we've had so far, one of the things that's really been interesting to me is that, and many of you trained as architects, and you went to architecture school and you learned to design buildings and to draw buildings. But here we are with the night going out and having to find these other techniques, these other methodologies to figure out how we can work with the night. And I'm just wondering, I mean, it seems like so much of the work we're doing is about methodologies and finding methodologies that work for each of your projects. And why do you think that is? I mean, are what we've learned as architects just ill-adapted to night? Is there something about darkness that, you know, we need to move it someplace else? Who wants to start? Ellie, Elizabeth. Because Elizabeth, you're using techniques from theater and different methods for trying to phase this, something that you, because you felt you had to find some other ways to explain this idea of spatial darkness.
But I guess like the modes of representation that we're taught to use as architects are like fixed plans, and that it's always as if every building that we see is seen in the daytime. And it's also, I think the main difficulty is how to represent something that's always changing, and that's even a model. So you've got spatial, like furniture is static. Everything like urban elements are static, but then it completely changes everything as soon as you change the light, and that's not taken into account at all in our discipline. So yeah, so I guess we're lacking something. There's something that we struggle to collect from the environment.
No, because I have the same problem, and let me just pause here for a second. Nicola, do you want to do your presentation? Are you ready? And we come back to the questions?
Yeah, it's okay.
Because I know you're talking about methodologies too. So, okay, you ready? We'll let you go, and then we'll come back.
Okay, so it's okay. Can you see my screen? Yeah.
I can.
Can you hear me? Everything is all right? Okay, thank you. So light sobriety, which is the title of my PhD, Pedagogy of Light Sobriety. Light sobriety is we mean by light sobriety the recent use of artificial lighting on its technologies and innovations motivated by a single data, that of the cycles of use of the outdoor night space. And our work focuses on public and private lighting in rural and urban environments. We question the notion of rhythm, the city building rhythm, the lighting renovation rhythm, the regulatory evolution, the technical and technological innovation, the human and non-human uses of the ground, and the rhythm of the evolution of cultural representation of lighting and darkness. And we try to monitor and synchronize all this rhythm in just one interface that I will present later. During this conference, I will present the management and method of street lighting in France and their normative and regulatory aspects, the notion of black frame, which I would like to discuss with you a bit after, a methodology, the one of the collaborative approach, a tool, dynamic digital mapping as an interface for collaboration and decision-making about street lighting strategies, and the limit and perspective about the collaboration in the territorialization of nocturnal strategies for the synchronization of all dynamics related to nighttime ambiances. First, the management. In France, there is mainly two ways of management the street lighting, by the municipality or the community, or in the form of a public service delegation to a departmental energy syndicate. The artificial lighting is first framed by an European standard adapted to France, the one of the ENNF 13201, indicating among other the expected illuminance level by category of roadway, and then by a recent regulation, the one of December 27, 2018, dedicated to the reduction of light pollution and framing, among other criteria of ULO, color temperature, switching on and off times. These normative and regulatory elements provide a mainly quantitative framework for the artificial lighting. Here are some visual we did during the PhD to show some of the elements we can find in the regulatory of the December 27, 2018. So Now about the black frames. These management dynamics are today motivated by a dominant concept in France, the concept of black frames or black grid. There is something here, I don't know what is it. The nighttime public space sees its atmosphere determined by a quantity of artificial lighting in terms of lux and Kelvin, historically determined according to criteria of mobility and more recently of respect for the environment, participating in the emergence of these black grids, which are cartographic zoning more or less superimposed on the green on blue grids made up of natural ecological corridors on waterways. These black grids, recent and widely debated in the academic and operational world, are already evolving towards notion of dark grids, where lighting is not very present, on light grids, where lighting is preserved for the benefit of extinction around the indicated area. Today, none of them investigate the cultural representation of artificial lighting and darkness among the population. So here, for example, we have a first map on the left, which shows biodiversity indicators, and on the right, a second map, which shows conflict areas between nocturnal uses of the city and natural environment. But we do not have really indicators about the experience of the people or real activities on the ground. Then the stakes and the methods. We believe that the evolution of the nighttime ambiances must not be done in accordance with the needs and uses of human or non-human users on the ground. In the current logic of reducing the energy bill on the impact on the ecosystems, the new lighting strategies remain on a panel of technical and quantitative determinants and seem to omit the user, understood as the one who use a public service, like the street lighting service. Public service, which, by the way, are also not enough mobilized around the issue of nighttime ambiances, largely mobilized in silo around daytime developments. The stake here is about matching nighttime needs on land uses to street lighting strategies. These needs and uses represent, according to us, one of the most powerful levers in what we call the territorialization of nightlife, affordable at least from two angles in our case. In political science, this is an approach to public policies that emphasize the specificities of each territory as opposed to a vertical approach organizing public action by compartmentalized sectors of activity. The case of nocturnal territoriality is understood by Claude Raffestin as our daily, ordinary practice on uses of nocturnal spaces offers a second wave of understanding it. And in France, public space planning is organized in silos. There is the green spaces, the roads, the traffic lighting, the public tranquility, urban quality, new mobilities, and street lighting, for example. And except in specific cases of large-scale urban development, the issue of nighttime atmosphere is treated in a secondary and mainly technical manner. Skills, knowledge, budgets on meeting time are reduced to a strict minimum in favor of consideration on daytime development and associated atmospheres. We think that it's now possible to synchronize services on decision on nighttime strategies. As an example, a study of the image of architectural and urban planning competitions in the Nantes area showed the exclusively daytime representation of future facilities, an emblematic development in the territory. And it seems that only a few international projects show nighttime ambiances like the one provided by the Studio Mir, CGI studio in Norway. At this point, a problem opens up: how to harmonize and inform the actors and decision makers of the territory to the contemporary stakes of nighttime ambiances. In our research, we aim to unlock and share the nocturnal temporality in a more widespread way, which leads us to our case study of Brest. So Brest, the metropolis of Brest, which has 8 municipalities. In the case of this project, this awareness rising is developed since preliminary phases, during which we are able to open the exchanges with 10 departments, actors of the public space. These first exchanges allows us to inform the actors we met about the existence and the pursuit of a metropolitan nighttime strategy spread over 8 municipalities on nearly 35,000 light points. Beyond mere information, these exchanges aim to consolidate the knowledge of the various departments to the contemporary issue of artificial lighting, giving rise to a first step in the pedagogy of light sobriety. So, this pedagogical approach is associated with an exclusive digital graphic representation tool dedicated to the light strategy. This strategy is presented in 2 steps. A first diagnosis step, mapping the lighting data of Brest Metropole, for example, here, the source typology, the color of temperature here, or if we have the data, the regimes of shutting down and on the lights on the city. The cartographic support also allows us to georeference all the physical indicators of the public space, like the road network, the centrality poles here, or natural spaces here. I can zoom in. Can you still hear me and see me?
Yes.
Thank you. The second stage of projection, I'm just going to disable everything here. The second stage is about the projection, understood as the first sequence of territorialization of the nighttime atmosphere with regard to the functioning of public space. It introduces the usual top-down vision, situating photometric indicators according to a classification of roads, like here, for example. But we can at least find 2 innovations, a variation of color temperature according to the location of biodiversity spaces here and here. And the simplification to the lighting and extinction regime with regard to different typology of residential and centralities area, which is here. A third stage offers to citizens the possibility to comment and appreciate the macro strategy from their own uses and needs of their place at night. This way, we become able to gather population experiences of their common night space, which is by this form here. These contributions, which we call sensitive data, become for us the strongest indicator in evolution of lighting strategy toward light sobriety. Beside the macro approach, carried out with the lighting department of the metropolis, allows to open a shared consideration with the elected officials of the municipalities and services of the metropolis. This consideration allows to raise awareness of the decision maker to the contemporary stakes of the public lighting and to accompany the decision process of reduction and extension of the artificial lighting. At this point, the mobilization of the digital mapil tool allows us to transmit in real time the current state of street lighting and the strategic projection of light sobriety. This tool, called Scan for Schéma de cohérence d'ambiance nocturne, Nocturne is developed with the objective of becoming an evolving and collaborative decision support tool. The name was chosen for the following reason. The notion of scheme indicates a framing document of the lighting strategy at the metropolitan scale, which can accompany the implementation on the long term. The approach of coherence is understood as spatial, temporal, and usual on the scale of all the spaces present outside at night. The nocturnal ambience will be adapted in order to respect balance between human, fauna, and flora activities according to criteria that are mostly cyclical. The projection of ambiances places the dimensioning of the developer in a quality logic through user experiences, whereas the streetlight adapt to the need on activities and not the opposite. The mobilization of the term nocturnal restitutes a temporality, the night, and a resource, the darkness, and allows to extract the strategic documents from consideration exclusively motivated by artificial lighting. The collaborative approach is conducted directly from the digital interface, allowing us to centralize data, representation, analysis, and strategies into a collaborative interface. This collaborative approach encourages the contributor to position himself as a future actor of the nighttime ambiances of his territory by providing a fine on daily usage expertise that we otherwise consider inaccessible. And then to conclude, the limit on perspective, this collaborative work was initiated in 2021 with the Metropolis of Brest. The methodology undertaken today remains in a top-down method where the end user is still absent from the collaborative loop. Its insertion is planned once the macro strategy has been politically agreed, with the aim of territorializing it on determining the micro scale adapted to the use of each place. In this sense, and to take up Einstein's scale, we are thinking of leading a transition from a tokenism to a partnership between citizens, engineers, and decision makers. This methodology and its tools are being deployed in parallel in other French communities and underline the willingness of decision makers and engineers to reduce the amount of artificial light in order to achieve substantial energy savings, greater respect for biodiversity, and to place their renovation programs in an accessible and controlled schedule. The collaborative approach and the digital tools make it possible to consider the simplified evolution of strategies for the nighttime ambiances of specific territories, in line with political and technical development, and with current and future cycles of daily, seasonal, and generational use, with the aim of consolidating the dynamics of sober lighting adapted to the uses and temporalities of its territory. Merci.